Hi, and welcome to another webinar. This time we're taking a look at the Lightning Conductor and how it can be used to aggregate content within inside of SharePoint Online. So what we're going to do first of all is just have a quick introduction, and then we'll talk about the benefits of the Lightning Conductor and really sort of focus in on why you might want to aggregate content, but also why aggregate content with the Lightning Conductor as well. So of course, there's different business reasons why we might want to aggregate content, but also the Lightning Conductor specifically, we'll take a look at contrasting that with things like the highlighted content web part and so on. So first of all, welcome again to the webinar. There will be a chance to ask questions at the end of this webinar if you want to. So you can either do that in the chat window, you can put a question in there in the chat window as we go along, or just at the end, there'll be the opportunity to ask questions there. Or if you're feeling brave, feel free to raise your hand and I'll be able to unmute you and you'll be able to ask your question live. All right, so first of all, just a quick intro to Lightning Tools as an organization. So we're a company that provide different tools for Microsoft SharePoint and also Microsoft Teams as well. And those tools are geared around things like, well, of course, the content rollup, which is what we're going to look at very, very shortly. But we've also got other products as well, which are available for SharePoint on premises and also SharePoint Online, both classic and modern. And that includes a discussion forum tool, so you can post questions, receive responses, and moderate posts and things like that, as you would expect from a discussion forum tool. We have a list form designer, so you can customize classic or modern list forms to be able to add logic and so on into your forms. We've also got some data integration tools, such as business connectivity services tools, charting, and our data viewer, so you can present external data from things like SQL, Azure, and Oracle, and so on into SharePoint, and to be able to highlight key data using things like conditional formatting and so on as well. And finally, we've also got a permissions management tool, which actually I've just finished a webinar on permissions management. So if you want to check back on to lightningtools.com and go to the webinars later on today, you should be able to see the webinar that we recorded from the previous session showing off our permissions management tool, which is a tool for site owners and site collection administrators as well as IT, so that you can produce very effective permission reports with inside of SharePoint Online. So that's really who we are as a company, and myself, I founded the company back in 2007, and you'll find also I am amongst the community, so you'll see me speaking perhaps at different events, also on techsplaining.net, where we host a pod show, and also inside the UK here, I regularly organise the SharePoint Saturday event, which we've done for many years now. So let's jump straight into the reasons to aggregate content. And you may already realize the reasons for aggregating content within inside of your SharePoint environment. Really what we're looking at doing is saving time looking for this content, but also being able to report on the content as well that lives within inside of our SharePoint environment. So of course, the nature of SharePoint is we can create different teams or team sites rather. So we can create different team sites. They can have subsites. You may also use the new modern sites with the hub and associated sites kind of scenario. And basically, inside each of those different sites, you're going to have lots of different SharePoint lists and also SharePoint libraries. And they can be using some of the out-of-the-box templates, things like tasks or contacts or announcements and document libraries. But also maybe you've got some custom lists as well that use content types or just custom columns. And one of the challenges is how much time our business users spend trying to find that content when it's got that kind of hierarchy. So they could go from site to site knowing that they've seen a document somewhere and not being able to find it, maybe having to go back to search and so on, or maybe somebody assigned them a task, they couldn't remember which team site that was in, or was it in Planner, and so on and so forth. So The idea being is to save the business user from having to go to all these different places looking for the content, and if they can't find that content, maybe even worst case duplicating the content. They're creating a similar document or uploading a different version of the document that they have in an email somewhere or something like that, to making it much easier where they can just go to one central place. And by going to that central place, we can target content towards them that is relevant to them. It's highlighting information that is that maybe we want to stand out, and so on as well. So if we take tasks as a good example, I think everybody can relate to that. We've got all the different task lists appearing in all these different team sites, and what do you care about from an end user? Probably your tasks, not the person sat next to you and their tasks. You care about your tasks and which tasks are high priority and so on. You don't want to spend time sort of trying to go to different places looking for those tasks. So having a single view of all the tasks that you need to perform that are highlighting all the high priority ones and maybe highlighting also those ones that are overdue would be a useful report for you to have. But we can also apply the same sort of thing to document libraries, to announcements, and like I say, custom lists and so on as well. And you can design those views without having to use any code whatsoever. So simply, it's a case of going in and applying conditional formatting, adding your grouping, and things like that that you want to have with inside your report. So we can do that. There's the reasons for aggregating. Why the Lightning Conductor? First of all, it's simple to use. It's not just SharePoint lists. We can also aggregate content from search as well. We can also grab content from Microsoft Graph. And if you were around last week, we actually had Jeremy Thake, the principal engineer for Microsoft Graph from Microsoft, actually present on what is possible using the Microsoft Graph. And so you can go and get content from things like Planner or from Microsoft Teams or from your OneDrive and so on. So all these other places, not just SharePoint lists, and build a report on that content as well, also with conditional formatting and so on, so that you have this nice, easy to read report. And if you are in that sort of stage where perhaps you've got some task lists with tasks in it, but you're also using Planner to organize your day and things like that as well, what you can actually do is actually use the same instance of the Lightning Conductor with two different views, one for your Planner tasks and one for your task list tasks. And that way you can still go to one place and see all of those tasks centrally. And that doesn't have to just be in SharePoint that you build that view. You can also build that view with inside Teams as well. So you can actually add the Lightning Conductor as a Teams tab and see the content there. So let's look at how we can do all of this stuff. So what I'm going to do is jump into SharePoint. And here in SharePoint, we have a page that's already been created, but it doesn't yet have the web part placed on it. And that is called the Lightning Conductor. So you can actually go through, like I say, and add this web part onto any page at all. It's a modern web part. It's built under the SharePoint framework, and therefore it's responsive and everything else that you would expect from a modern tool. So here we're going to just click onto edit to put the page into edit mode. And as I move my mouse, we get the little plus icon here, so we can go through and add a new web part onto the page. And of course, there's the highlighted content, which you could use. So the highlighted content is the Microsoft Content Aggregation tool. It has some pretty nice views in it. So you can go through and aggregate from this site or this site collection. You could go and get things like tasks and what have you and display those. So same sort of thing, but these views here you can't customize. You can choose one of these sort of layouts. If we take the list layout as an example, it does show us the title, modified by. Who are they assigned to? What priority are they, etc., etc. We don't know, and neither will we know because we can't actually customize the look and feel of that web part there. So I'll delete that one, and we'll go through and add the Lightning Conductor. So here we can drop the Lightning Conductor onto the page. And what we do is we actually provide two different ways of configuring the Lightning Conductor. We've got a quick, easy way that sort of meets the needs of most of our customer base. But we've also got an advanced way as well, where you're fully in control, it's very granular, and you can design everything exactly how you want it to look. So when we hit configure here, this takes us into the quick configuration, and we've got the advanced mode here where you can jump into that. So we're going to take a look at the quick configuration first of all, and let's just cover that typical scenario of aggregating tasks. So here we've got 4 questions. First one is, what list data do you want to view? And in the drop down there, we've got some of the common scenarios. So we've got document libraries, task lists, events, announcements. There's also messages and users, which is coming from Graph. Other would take us into the advanced mode. So if we take tasks as an example, you'll see that we've then got some sort of common ways of refining the view. So using filters and sorting criteria. So tasks has 3 different options. You've got all tasks. It'll be all tasks within the scope that I select in a moment. Or we can also show things like my tasks within the scope or my overdue tasks within the scope. And if we were to change that maybe to document libraries, we've got all documents, my checked out documents. Announcements also has recent announcements or all announcements. So there's lots of different things that you can just very easily go through, pick and choose what you want to see, where you want the data to come from. So do we want that query to just query the current site? Or do we also want to include any subsites of the current site? Do we want to choose the entire site collection? Or do we want to go and get the hub site and associated sites? Or we can also go and get the current tenant and so on. So there's lots of different sort of common ways of selecting where that data comes from. And as we go into the advanced mode, you can make that more granular by picking and choosing individual lists. You can pick and choose individual lists from different site collections or different sites, or include entire site collections, across site collections, and so on. You can be very picky about where you want that content to come from. So I'm just going to go with the current site collection for now. And in here, the last question is, how do you want to display the content? And that will also vary depending on whether you're looking at maybe a task list or a document library or an announcement list as well. So here we've got the grid view with a calendar or a calendar view. If it's document library, I've got a tile view versus a list view, and so on. So I'm just going to start off with the grid view and hit save. And sure enough, here we have a list of tasks. And already you can contrast that with the highlighted content web part. Notice that not only are we getting the title, but we're also getting who the task is assigned to, what's the status of the task, what's the priority of it, when's it due, and how complete is it. But what I can also do is add as many columns to that as I like without having to write any code. So in the by clicking the drop down of any of the columns, we get to go down to the column settings, and I can show a column. And all of these columns here are related to the task lists within inside the scope of my aggregation. So if I also wanted to show the start date, I can select the start date and have that added to the view. And we can move it around. So it makes more sense to me that the start date comes before the due date. So I can actually hit the drop down here and just move left. That's what I was looking for. So I'll move that left until it's before the due date. So we've customized that. The other things that we might want to do is add some conditional formatting. So in the drop down under the priority here, I don't want to sort of just rely on this gray text as to whether it's high, low, or normal priority. Let's actually apply some color or icons and get that to stand out. So I can come here to the formatting and choose my criteria. So let's start off with high priority tasks. And what do we want to do with high priority tasks? We'll make sure that they've got a nice color. So we can pick a forecolor or a background color, and it will default to the theme, which is this purple theme. Or we can go and choose a custom color, and we can also pick from recently used colors so that we're sort of applying a consistent list of colors across any instance of the Lightning Conductor as well, if you want to do it that way. But yeah, we can, if you like, go to the theme colors, custom colors, and so on, and really choose how we want that to stand out. So let's either pick it from here, or we can pick the red from the recent colors, like I said, and select that. And that will change the foreground color, so the font of the high priority tasks. So if I just hit save, oh sorry, I must have chosen background. So let's change the background color. And I don't particularly like that. It doesn't look all that modern. So what I'm going to do is just clear the formatting. And instead, we'll come down to formatting and we'll choose an icon. So I'm actually going to choose from one of these icons, and you'll notice that we've got all sorts of icons in here that you can pick and choose from. Bolt lightning for lightning tools or whatever. So here we'll choose a dot. There we go. And we can choose what color we want to make that dot. So we'll make that dot red. We can choose how big we want the dot. We can choose if we just want the dot or also the word high. And I can also choose where I want the dot to appear, whether I want it on the left, the right, top left or top right of the cell value. So we'll save that, and that's just for the high priority tasks. There we go. Now I also want to add 2 more levels of formatting because we've also got 2 of the states that the tasks can be in. So here we'll choose a slightly different color dot. To me, it looks better if it is the dot. So we'll maybe just pick from this one. We'll go with that yellowy color and save that. So that's for my normal priority, and for low priority, you've guessed it, we'll go with green. So there's a nice color green, and that's for our low priority tasks. And let's save it. And there you go. We can now see low priority tasks, high priority tasks, and normal priority tasks a little bit clearer now. Okay, so the other thing we may want to also do is add some grouping. So that's easy enough. On the task status, I can just come down to group by. Now I've got all of my completed tasks together, my in progress tasks, and my not started tasks. And we can add as much or as many grouping levels as we like to that as well. So if you wanted to also group by user, so here I can see the completed tasks, and then I've got demo user 1 and demo user 2. And then in progress tasks, we've got demo user 1 and demo user 2, and so on. So creating this sort of view of tasks from my team is really straightforward. Another thing that I'd like to really stand out is over here we've got the percentage complete. Now a lot of these are of course 100% complete because they're all in the completed section, and then I've got a bit of a mixture in the in progress. So what we'll do is we'll just hit the drop down here on the percentage complete, go down to the formatting again, and what I'm going to do is actually use a data bar, and I'm going to set the maximum value to 1. Once more, it's picking up the theme color, which is the purple, and we could change that color if we wanted to. We can hide the underlying value, just hit save, and there we are. We've now got the sort of embedded data bars showing us how complete these tasks are. So of course the not started one isn't showing a data bar at all. The ones that are in progress, we can see quite clearly how they are progressing before being 100% complete, like the ones at the top. Okay, so that's a sort of thing that we can build with inside that that grid view. So you can show and hide columns, you can move them around, you can group, you can do conditional formatting, all of that we've seen. You can also filter on any of this as well if you want to, or apply sorting criteria. And there's a few sort of other settings in here as well that you can go through and configure. Okay, so what I want to do now is actually go through and add another view to this. So this one I'm going to call all tasks. But what I can do is create another instance, another view instance inside the same web part. So here we'll click onto the plus icon and we get another new view. And this one is also going to show tasks, but I'm going to show tasks inside a calendar. So we've given it a name. I'll hit the cog icon to bring up the configuration. And in here, we'll choose the tasks again, and it's going to be all tasks once more from the current site collection, but I want to show them in a calendar. So we'll hit save, and it's now created it. It's here in the drop down. So this is where we select our views, and we can choose the calendar view. And sure enough, there's our tasks. They are red, they're spanning multiple days, and they're red because they're overdue in this instance. We can navigate to them, of course. But we've got that sort of day, week, and month view, so we can sort of scroll back and see where those tasks are, and so on. Okay, so if you want to control the conditional formatting in there, of course you can do that. As we click onto the cog again, we can go through and apply the formatting. So if we just go and clear the conditional formatting, we can put our own in here. So actually I just cleared it. So when we hit save, they've reverted to the default color. They're not showing as overdue tasks inside the calendar anymore. Okay, and of course we can jump back to the other view as well if we want to. So that's sort of working with calendars and a mixture of the different types of view. If you wanted to work with document libraries or anything like that, once more, it's very straightforward. You've got the grid view or the tile view. If we hit save, we've now got a document library view. So we can call it documents, hit the drop down, and there's our document view. And the document view also works with folders and nested folders. So it's not flattening out all of the documents, which a lot of content query type web parts do. It's showing you the hierarchy as well, should you use folders. And of course, you can do the same sort of conditional formatting and everything else that you've already seen within the Lightning Conductor. So there's a few views that we've done. Let's jump into now the advanced configuration. So I'm going to click onto the plus one more time. And in here, let's this time go through. In fact, I'm going to show you two more. We'll have a look at documents, and just to make it clear, I'm going to put the word search in there. So we'll use a search to bring back some documents, and also what I want to do is have planner tasks as another view. And this one is going to use graph. Okay, so for search, what we'll do is we'll click onto the cog icon one more time. We're going to actually this time jump into the advanced mode. And in the advanced mode is where you can choose how you want to aggregate content. So do we want to use the search rollup provider, the object model provider, or the graph rollup provider? So if I was to use search, we can choose how we want to display it, whether it's a grid, or do you want to build your own JSON or XSLT view? And under the data source is where we configure how that content is going to come to us. So in here, because this one is using search, I can choose the query text and so on, and we can also choose the result source. So in here, I could say items matching a particular content type and set what that content type is. So the content type ID is going to be document. Okay, so that's going to use the search results in order to build my document query. Can we set the scope as well if we want to go across site collections and things like that? But under the columns tab is where we can go through and pick things like who the author is, what the site name is, maybe where it came from. We've got the file name in here somewhere. Just can't see it for looking. I'm sure it's there. Site name. Oh, title, sorry, is what I was looking for. That's why I couldn't see it. So I'll grab title and bring that up to the top here, or at least switch it around with the author. And we could show things like the file size, perhaps, which would be a useful one to see. So we can select that. And so on. You get the idea. So we pick and choose the columns that we want to show. You can make them sortable, filter on them, anything that you need to do in there. And under the display, we can set things like the display format. So whether or not we want to show or hide the file extension, what do we want to do for the author, also the size, and we can have things like sticky headers. So as you scroll down, you're not having to see the or see the headers disappear. We can show or hide the dynamic filter controls, set how many items per page we want to show, and so on and so forth, to basically configure the view the way that we want it to be. So as I hit save there, in the drop down, we've now got this documents using search, which I can select, and there we go. I've not made it look pretty, but as you see, we've got a list of documents, bringing back, in fact, 700 of those, because I said 100 per page. So you can see how sort of responsive that is on bringing back 100 documents. So the other one is going to be using graph, and there's some graph views that we can actually go through and configure under the quick configuration. So one of those is things like users. So I could select all users from Microsoft Graph, save that, and in the drop down here, there's our users. We could do things like group by external users and SharePoint users, or sorry, internal users. So we get that going. Or we can go through and again jump into the advanced configuration, which is what I'm going to do. So notice how that's already set to the Graph Rollup engine provider. When we go to the data source, rather than choose the entity type of user, I'm going to choose the entity type of planner task. We can set an item limit still. I'm going to remove that query because that's no longer relevant. That was querying from users. And instead we'll add a predefined query rather than a custom query. These are planner tasks. And so there's my query. It says it's valid, but I can edit it if I want to. Now under columns, if we just refresh that, make sure we're not getting the user columns, in here, these are all coming from planner tasks. So what we've got is things like the due date and the percent complete, the title, maybe when it was created would be useful. Anything in here that you sort of want to go and grab that is useful information about your planner task. So I'll grab title and drag that up to the top there. So that's the first column. So when we go to the display tab in here, notice that again, we can set things like the display format. So I can choose short date for the date and time. Percentage complete will actually render that as a percentage. And the title, we can choose what that's going to look like. We can also set aliases, which is actually a useful thing to do when using Graph because the values don't have spaces. So we'll have created date and due date, percent complete, and so on. And you can do grouping, set the column widths. You can add summary functions as well, which if I wanted to add a summary function, we can do that. So if we wanted to like have a count of how many tasks there are per group or per page or anything like that, we can also do that. So we could have a count per group. Okay, and then we can also again show things like the column headers and so on and so forth. And there's grouping and linking here, which we can go through and configure. So the linking column to navigate to the task and so on, we can set. So when we hit save, there they are. They're the planner tasks. So I can see because of that aggregate function that we built, there was 10. So 10 planner tasks, and we can see what the task name is, when they're due, when they were created, percentage complete, which maybe we want to round down, but that gives you the idea of that one. Okay, so there are views that could also be displayed in a calendar as well. You can also go through and apply all your conditional formatting and whatever you want to do on that view. Now, the other thing I wanted to show you was actually jumping into, if we just publish that, we're going to jump into Teams. And so here in Teams, there's already an instance of it. So with that instance, if we didn't have that, by the way, you just click onto the plus, select the Lightning Conductor, and the Lightning Conductor tab gets added as a tab in Teams. So now we have two Lightning Conductor tabs, and we can hit configure and do the same thing. So here we'll just say tasks or tasks from the current site in a grid view, hit save, and it's got the columns but no values because there is no content. So actually, let's just reconfigure that. So this is great because I didn't show you this bit. If we've got the object model under the data source, that's going from the current site, which is what I set it to do. But we could choose from multiple site collections, and this is where we can go through and pick and choose the site collections that we want to roll up those tasks from. So I could choose this entire site collection here, and if I just scroll down to somewhere, this one here or there will do. So we're choosing the same list type and content type, same columns, etc., but I've just expanded the scope. So now we should get some content back. Or not, maybe I choose the wrong ones. So anyway, let's just do one more. We'll go with all tasks again from the current tenant. That should do the trick. There's tasks in there somewhere that we know there is. So in the drop down here, we can now choose our view. There we go. All of our tasks coming from the entire tenant in a single view where we can go through and do all of the same stuff. So if we wanted to move those columns around, apply the conditional formatting and so on, we can do that in Teams as well. Okay, so that's a sort of quick tour of the Lightning Conductor. And here is where we'll open it for any questions, should anybody have any. You can download the Lightning Conductor. Point that out, so there's the URL to go and download it. Easiest way to do that is go to lightningtools.com and navigate from the products page to the Lightning Conductor. We do currently have an offer as well, so 15-month subscription for the price of 12 months, which expires on the 30th of April. So if you are interested in it, you get a few extra months use as well for the same money. So at that point, what I'll do is open up for questions. So if you do have any questions, drop them in the chat window if you haven't done already. Currently not seeing any. Yeah, I see people dropping off but not asking questions. So I take it I answered all your questions. I hope I did, if you did have any. But yeah, thank you very much for attending. I hope you found it very, very useful. And please, if you want to come back and access the video, you'll find that recording available on our website underneath webinars. So as you go to lightningtools.com, click onto webinars at the top, and you'll see the recording there. Many thanks for attending. Cheers. Bye.